Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're playing more of the Between a Rock and a Hard Place seasonal event, which is an alternate game mode in which every round we have 4 rocks in every row, giving us less board space. But today's deck thrives on just that, so let's go give it a look. So today we'll be playing a Monsters Carapace Keltullis deck because even though we have limited board space, that doesn't slow down Keltullis. Keltullis will destroy the weakest unit at the end of our turn of whoever has more units on their side of the board. And that means that functionally what this does is limits the number of units that both players can have, otherwise every turn they're going to lose a unit. So what we do is we load up on units that have high base power and a bunch of special cards to boost those cards that have high base power. That way, if it's just a battle of having the 2 or 3 highest units, we are very likely to win that battle. So that means that we have Keltullis, also a Cave Troll to help protect Keltullis, and we also have Old Speartip Asleep, which of course after a few turns will transform into an empowered version of Old Speartip, and by increasing his base power turn this into an 18 base power unit, which is just insane. So you have Cave Troll, Keltullis, and ideally this powered up Old Speartip, and that way you have a ton of base power on your 3 units, and then with the remainder of your cards, you're looking to do things like increase the power of those with boosts, like Triangle Within a Triangle on Keltullis, which is worth 13 boosts, and other things like Carapace for boosts or for damage, as well as Hideous Feast similarly, and the likes. In addition to that, we also have the means to get Keltullis back in a subsequent round. So we use Keltullis, Cave Troll, and ideally that Old Speartip combo in round 1. And then in round 2, if necessary, if we're trying to go for the win there, we can use Witch's Sabbath to bring out our 3 highest base power cards from our graveyard. And again, if you have Cave Troll, Keltullis, and Old Speartip, then that's definitely going to be those 3. Just make sure that your opponent has enough units in their graveyard that you'll still get all those cards out. And notably, you'll not get any neutral cards out, so we do have 1 or 2 neutral units in this deck and don't need to worry about them getting summoned out. And even if your opponent does have more units than you do, then that means you're going to summon Keltullis out and immediately activate Keltullis, so still certainly workable. Now, it does get your units back out with the doomed status, which means at the end of the round in which you've used Witch's Sabbath, those units would get completely banished, would not go back into your graveyard. So if, for example, you played Keltullis round 1, maybe you win round 1, but you try to go for the 2-0 push with Witch's Sabbath, and your opponent finds a way to beat you, in that case, what you need to do is find a way to purify Keltullis so that she does go back into your graveyard, so that you can use something like Witch's Sabbath again to get Kelly back out. So, there are a few ways that you can make that happen. First of all, removing the Doom status on Kelly. Well, you can just purify her. And the way you can make that happen is with either one of your Crow's Eyes, which also gives you a boost, so that certainly works well with the other things you're trying to do with the Kelly deck. And we also have a Pellar, which similarly is for the purification, so that's also a way to make sure you purify Kelly. Again, after using Witch's Sabbath, Kelly will get doomed, so make sure you remove that doomed status, otherwise Kelly will just get banished at the end of the round, and you won't have a way to get her back out if you don't win in round 2, and you need to find another way to still win in round 3. So that's how you purify Kelly, get her back into your graveyard so that you can summon her back out. But then you ask yourself, well, Lids, we already used Witch's Sabbath. How on earth are we supposed to use this again to get Kelly back onto the board once again? And well, that is why we also have Alissa Henson, because if we use her, we can, after using Witch's Sabbath in round 2, bring Witch's Sabbath from our graveyard back into our deck, which means we can use Witch's Sabbath again in round 3, assuming Kelly has been purified and is in our graveyard in round 3 when we use Witch's Sabbath. So, then how do we make sure that we get Witch's Sabbath? I mean, of course, you could just luckily draw into it in round 3, but the most consistent and reliable way is to use Whispess Tribute, which you can use Witch's Sabbath again. So basically, to summarize, that means play Kelly, Old Speartip, and Cave Troll in round 1, and then use Witch's Sabbath in round 2 to get them back out, and make sure that you purify Kelly with either the Pellar or with Crow's Eye, so that Kelly does not have Doom, so Kelly will go back into your graveyard at the end of round 2. If you win round 2, fine, no problem, obviously you win. If you don't win round 2, however, then you can make sure to use Alissa Henson to get Witch's Sabbath back into your deck and replay Witch's Sabbath using that Whispess Tribute so that you can get Kelly out once again, and you still have access to your key win condition in every round. Outside of that, we do have nifty tricks that are not crucially important, but are potentially helpful. Quick note that Ring of Favor is in this deck, and that means that this starts in your hand in round 1 and gets more powerful the longer you wait to use it. But if you don't use it in round 1, it goes away. So obviously, try to use this in round 1. It's potentially quite big boost on Kelly, but then again, it's a risk reward of how much are you willing to gamble on getting this as big as possible before you potentially risk losing it. more unusual is that we also have Quax, who, when we play it in the melee row, will summon out the highest provision cost unit from our deck and our opponent's deck. Now, against some opponents, this is incredibly effective because that means you will brick whatever the deploy ability would have been on that highest unit. And for us, that would either mean it's another way to get out Kelly, which obviously is great, or if you already have Kelly in hand or on the board, then it would give you Old Speartip. Now, this one you want to be a little bit careful of because, again, technically speaking, rather than playing Old Speartip directly or summoning Old Speartip directly, we would prefer to use Old Speartip asleep and wait a few turns so that we increase Old Speartip's base power by 6, but you could still summon Old Speartip out or play Old Speartip out directly, so shouldn't be too much of an issue, but just make sure you're keeping that in mind. And then outside of that, if Kelly does get moved into the range row, where of course she no longer is active, then you can use Strays of Spalla to move her back into the melee row and reactivate her ability. And then outside of that, we have, notably, no consumption units at all. I was talking about this a little bit with some people in one of the previous videos, how technically speaking, the rocks that you get in this event can destroy a unit. And most of the time, even with Death Wish units, that's not really worth using. Kelly is one potential exception though, because we don't really want to have units on the board, because when we play a unit, that means we're allowing our opponent to play one more unit as well. So what we can do is if we play something like Archespore, we can then immediately use a rock to destroy it, summon out the other Archespore, and then destroy that Archespore with another rock. And basically, although this doesn't give us any points, it gives us a lot of thinning, and it is a way of doing that without us having to have additional units on the board. So it's a way of getting us far more consistent in round 2 and round 3, which, given how we have some important cards we want to make sure that we draw into, is a nice way to make that happen. And we also have things like Bridge Troll, which if you destroy it, you're still going to get that 4 boost on your lowest card, so that's a useful tool as well. And also, things like Pellar, once you use the deploy ability, you might just want to get rid of it, because at 4 base power, it's not all that valuable when you have Kelly on the board. It's much easier for them to outscore a 4 power Pellar than it is for them to outscore a 9-point Kelly, a 7-point Cave Troll, and a potentially 18-point Old Speartip. So the higher base power units you have on the board, the better. Lower base power units like Pellar, you might want to get rid of them altogether when you're rocking Kelly. And so that's really all there is to it. It is basically just Kelly, although in this event we have, with the rocks, some more creative ways to work with Kelly, and of course we have the consistency of having ways to get Kelly back in round 2 and round 3 with both Witch's Sabbath and Alissa Henson. So now let's go see it in action. Alright, so going up against monsters here, and they'll go first. And this is a little bit concerning because their leader ability can move Kelly into the range row where of course she's no longer active, so gonna need to keep an eye out for that. As for a starting hand, Cave Troll is great. Old Speartip, we like Old Speartip asleep, but we'll deal with it. The Purification, yes, we need it for round 2 or round 3, but it's not necessary in round 1. And then Archespore, I mean, we can probably do better. They'll start with Wild Hunt Hound, and of course, they've Dominance here, because they're the only unit. Let's start with our Cave Troll to set ourselves up for a safer Kelly. And don't think they're going to be using many statuses here. This is monsters, right? We'll be okay. Okay, and they go Yiggern, which is obviously huge base power, which is not great against Kelly. On the other hand, though, which is Sabbath, when we get that back out, it's not going to get the armor back, so we'll immediately get destroyed, so that's kind of nice. But let's start by whittling away at it with our damage, because actually between our 2 damaging special cards, along with Parasite, we can probably take it out here, unless they have another way to give it additional armor. Nilfgaard, okay, so I mean, it definitely looks like a Wild Hunt deck in that case. And so now we do have the option of going Royal Decree into Kelly, because we'll have 2 units and they'll have 3, so this will destroy their weakest unit, getting rid of their Hound. Okay, now they're gonna use leader ability, yeah, to move Cave Troll, and that makes sense. Now they have access to Kelly, and they're gonna move Kelly as well. So Kelly is now no longer active in that range row. We do have a way to move her back into the melee row with the Strays of Spalla, but we don't have a way to get that right now, so that's a bit of an issue. Let's get rid of Yiggern, though, because that definitely can be a big factor. That was, of course, their biggest unit. And tell you what, let's use a leader ability charge here on Cave Troll, just to make sure we have dominance, not them, so that will limit Nilfgaard's damage a little bit. And Ring of Favor, I think, is how we're going to win round 1 here, just a matter of how long can we wait to use it. Apiary and Phantom. So at this point, I think we just use Ice Troll as a bit of a throwaway, because again, trying to see how long we can wait before using Ring of Favor, because I think that's going to be really helpful for us. And, I mean, we could play Old Speartip. I'd rather wait until we get, ideally, the chance to mulligan him and go for Old Speartip asleep instead to get him stronger, but I mean, we could do that. They're going to put Frost in the melee row. Oh, maybe it's to set up damage on the Bruiser, I guess? Okay, I mean, a little weird, but sure. And so, again, yeah, we could go Old Speartip, but I think ideally we can avoid playing him. They are going to go further here. They're going to go Aridin. Wow, I imagine they did not want to have to use him in round 1. And Winter Queen comes out as well. Okay, so, I mean, we could use Old Speartip. Like I said, in an ideal situation, we're using Old Speartip asleep. But, okay. If it gets us in the lead here, and, you know, we'll throw on a leader ability charge just so it's a little bit more of a lead, then maybe we can still make this work. Speaking of Old Speartip asleep, there's their Old Speartip asleep. So, at this point, I think we do not want them to get their empowered Old Speartip out here. Otherwise, Witch's Sabbath becomes much less effective for us. So we'll pass, and it means they'll win round 1. And now, just taking a look at what they're going to get out here, and, you know, can we use Bleeding Effigy to decent effect here? Naglfar, not loving what we'd get out of that. So, I mean, we do need the Purification now, so picking up Pellar is actually a pretty big addition. Because they are going to poach with Oberon, no less. That's very aggressive. Okay, Wild Hunt Hound is what they get, and again, they have dominance. So I think we're immediately Witch's Sabbathing here. And again, means Yigurn immediately gets destroyed because it doesn't get the armor. And we have a lot of base power we're getting out here. So we are immediately in the lead, and Kelly will still destroy their lowest unit because they still had more cards than us. They'll pass. Now, although we are in the lead here, we cannot pass because we need to purify Kelly. Otherwise, we won't be able to get her back in the next round. So do need to use Pellar here. And we will lose Pellar to Kelly, but still enough points here to win round 2 and before they can get their empowered Old Speartip asleep out there. Now for round 3. Okay, don't really need Archespore. Old Speartip asleep, of course, now having already played Old Speartip is not that effective. Wax, I'm a little concerned about that against monsters because they actually had an Old Speartip asleep, so they probably have Old Speartip either in their deck or in their hand. So that's a big risk, summoning out their highest provision cost card. Let's start, though, with Alissa, because that'll get us our Witch's Sabbath back. And we need that. Then Onel Conqueror. Okay. Now, let's use Whispess Tribute, because with that we can use Witch's Sabbath. So break that out. Once again, they get Yigurn, but Yigurn doesn't have the armor, so it gets destroyed. Notably, no Cave Troll this time. So Kelly is a little bit at risk here. And we'll deliberately make sure we have fewer units than them. And we'll get rid of Alissa, even though she has more power than the Troll. The Troll is potentially an engine, whereas Alissa is not, so the Troll might be able to outscore. And we'll put the leader ability on Kelly just so that she does not get locked. Now she gets moved from their leader ability charge. We do have Strays of Spalla in hand, so we can move her back now, fortunately. So that's not as big of a concern. And that Foglet could be a pretty big engine for them. Let's use Strays here to move Kelly back into that melee row. So now Kelly is active again. Let's also use a rock to destroy Strays, because we don't really need that. That way, we make sure Kelly is still active. We have fewer cards, so we get the Ice Troll boosted up as well. Naglfar's crew. Bit of an engine for them. Kind of odd row choice for it, but now I think we need to go triangle into triangle here, because otherwise, if they have Imler's Wrath, it's possible they might be able to destroy Kelly. Bruiser, uh-oh. Okay, now they move Kelly, and at this point, we no longer have a way to get her back to the melee row, so that is a concern. Naglfar, I mean, we can use that to get, I guess, just more boosts. Don't think we'll have quite enough time to get all the vitality, but as I said, we kind of needed to do a little bit of an early triangle within a triangle to keep Kelly out of removal range. Other on-El Conqueror, those are high base power, low provision units. And as I said, I don't think we want to do Quack's melee row because we know they have an old Speartip somewhere. So that could backfire, but I think if we go range row, it's less likely for them to get a high base power card there. So 4 power either side, I mean, we'll take it, I suppose. And we no longer have that much of a concern about having fewer units than our opponent. I mean, yes, it's going to power up the troll, but Kelly's no longer active. They do not have dominance, so they do not get the other rider out here. Bleeding Effigy at this point, they have, what, a 5? So just power up one of our people. And we're hoping that this is enough here. Again, expecting perhaps an old Speartip. And there it is. But it is not enough. So we'll hold on for the win. Alright, so going up against Nilfgaard here. And they'll go first. And definitely don't want 2 Archespores. And outside of that, I think we can still do better here. And, okay, so we have Kelly, obviously, that's great. We do not have Cave Troll, but I think we can get that with Quacks at this point. Mangonel, that would suggest they're trying to go with a bunch of spying and maybe just statuses in general. But I think, let's just double check here. Is Quacks going to get his Cave Troll? Yeah, it looks like it. Okay, so let's use Quacks in that case, and we might even break one of their better cards in doing so. Oh, and it gets out Vilgefortz. Okay, yeah, I'd say that's probably pretty good trade then, and we'll just throw a status on our Cave Troll so that it doesn't get locked, or, you know, whatever else they're going to try to do to it. Okay, so it's just aristocrats. I mean, yes, it does seem like they are very focused on giving spying. Now, let's see. If we go Kelly here, we'd have the same number of units as them, but we don't really need Quacks, so we can use a rock to destroy Quacks and immediately activate Kelly. And yeah, we're getting rid of a 4-point card to get rid of their 4-point card, but theirs was an engine and ours wasn't. They can't really do anything with the lock on Cave Troll, so that's not really a factor. And now we can use Bleeding Effigy here, and with it, give ourselves a little bit of a boost over here on Kelly. And destroy one of their other cards. Not just as informants, now, obviously we don't have any bronze units, they can't create any copies of them. But it does put more cards on our side of the board. So what we could do, though, is use the rocks to destroy that, and we could even use Archespore here. Let's just get rid of a Duchess's Informant, and then with Archespore, we get out the other Archespore, we destroy this one too, and that's purely just for thinning purposes to increase our consistency here, because we don't really need the points, but now they're actually destroying one of their own units deliberately. So maybe they've caught on here. It seems like they may have. Yes, they've destroyed 2 of their units, so now we have more cards in them, and at this point, that means that we are at risk of destroying our Cave Troll, which is much more concerning. Puts us in a tricky spot here, because we don't really want to do that, otherwise they could lock Kelly. I mean, we could do that and then put a leader ability charge on Kelly to get the Vial. Maybe we're okay with that. So in that case, I suppose we can proceed to just boost Kelly. Put the Carapace on Kelly, and then say bye-bye to Cave Troll. Alright, then they're gonna boost up their Cave Troll with their Stratagem, and actually destroy their Cave Troll altogether. For what it's worth, if Kelly is the only card on the board in the melee row, then she will destroy herself, and they will not play any units, so that would be the case here, unless we play something else. So I think we need to have some sort of sacrificial lamb, so that Kelly does not, well, end up getting destroyed. So we don't really want that to be Pellar, otherwise we have to get rid of that Vial on Kelly, and we don't want that to happen. So it's either Old Speartip or it's Whispess Tribute. Whispess is our way to make sure that we get access to Witch's Sabbath, so we don't really want to play her. She's lower power, so she's a bit better to sacrifice in that sense. Old Speartip is higher power, yes. But I guess we'll go Whispess. Now, obviously we don't want to play Witch's Sabbath here. We can go Hideous Feast, and this is basically just a throwaway because they don't have any cards to use that on. So it means we lose Whispess, and honestly, it might have been better to just use Old Speartip as our sacrifice, because, well, they continue to not play any units here. So, I mean, now it's pretty much inevitable, right, I suppose? So, I mean, we can still get him back with Witch's Sabbath, assuming that we get access to Witch's Sabbath. Alright, now they play a unit, thankfully now. Obviously, they can't poison Kelly when she has the Vial on her, but at least this means that we could pass here, and Kelly will not destroy herself. Obviously, Kelly has way more points than that Cobra does. So now they will destroy the Cobra, though. So that means Kelly, on our next turn, would destroy herself, but, I mean, that would mean they'd have to go unitless here. They're gonna play... Oh, but then destroy a unit. Yes, now Kelly destroys herself, but that means they still need to play something on their last turn here, so yes, they'll win round 1, but they have to go 3 cards down to do it now. Granted, they get Oniro here, which is not a bad little thing to finish the round with, to get the Echoed Copy in the next round, but still, that's a pretty big sacrifice. Creative way to go about doing that, though. Alright, and so now, let's see, we have tons of Purification, so we can probably get rid of one of those. We already got rid of our normal Old Speartip, so Old Speartip Asleep is not nearly as effective as it would normally be. But I think we might use it as a throwaway here, or at least it's an option. And seeing as how they're 3 cards down, I imagine they will, probably Dry Pass. So, it could be Old Speartip Asleep, but we do seem to have Purification to spare, so I guess we can use the Pellar here, which is obviously all we need to win round 2. Then the key here is that we need to make sure we can get Witch's Sabbath to get Kelly back. And can we make that happen with Naglfar? No, we have 4 golds in our deck, and so it's not guaranteed. So if we get more golds in our hand, then, okay, well, there is Witch's Sabbath, and now Naglfar might be guaranteed to show us both the remaining golds in our deck. But alas, just break out the Witch's Sabbath here. And they actually have some pretty high base power units that they get out from that. Let's make sure that we use Carapace, though, on our Cave Troll to shut down any statuses they might want to put on him. They'll go Heatwave on themselves, oddly enough. Don't see that every day. But it might be another deliberate attempt to reduce the number of units they have so that this will backfire. This is actually a really tricky spot we're in right here, because right now, Kelly is our lowest unit, so if we do nothing, Kelly destroys herself. If we boost up Kelly, Cave Troll is our lowest unit. We destroy Cave Troll. We don't have any leader ability charge remaining on Kelly, so she will get locked. But we do still have an answer, because if we use our Troll here, this will be our sacrificial lamb. We have the most cards, so we're going to be the one that loses a unit. It's the lowest unit. We'll destroy it. It boosts up Kelly. She's no longer the lowest unit on our side, so things are considerably safer now for us, long term. But now it's 3 units apiece, so we can go back to doing some boosting, so we'll just throw some boosts on Kelly here. Then Mangonel, which means they'll have more units, and so something's getting destroyed on their side, unless they go back to... using their rocks to destroy their own units, and now, once again, we find ourselves in a point where we would have Kelly backfire and destroy one of our cards, but we do still have another card we can play that will be our unit that gets destroyed, rather than the Cave Troll, which would have otherwise been what we'd lose, and we don't want that to happen. Now, it's another turncoat, but are they about to destroy this too? No. Okay, so in that case, let's just get the boost here from our Vial. And, okay, now they're going back to destroying their cards. In fact, 2 of them at that. Aristocrats, are they about to destroy this too? No, but we still have more units than they do. So, however, with Naglfar, we're guaranteed to get some kind of unit, either with Alissa or Royal Decree. So... take your pick. I guess we'll go with Royal Decree. And with that, it also doesn't really matter. So just throw something on the board here, so that we don't lose Cave Troll. And now they've only 1 card left here. And it's Oniro, with which... they go Experimental Remedy. Now that'll, of course, give them another unit, the one that we just destroyed at that. And they destroy that with a rock, which means that, yes, we have more units, but it doesn't matter at this point. Even if we lose Cave Troll, we still have enough points to hold on for the win. And that was a really cool match. Alright, so now going up against Syndicate here, and they'll go first. And we have Kelly, that's good. We have Cave Troll, that's also definitely good. Outside of that, we have a way to get Witch's Sabbath back in round 3. Well, there is Witch's Sabbath, and I guess Whispess Tribute, isn't as time-sensitive in that case. So let's make sure that we have stuff that we can actually play in round 1. And they start with Bincy, and that's actually, I think, a pretty big concern, because that can score a whole bunch of points, and we want to make sure that, the 2 or 3 cards on the board, that ours are bigger than their 2 or 3 cards on the board. But I think we'll still start with Cave Troll here. And now, theoretically, we could opt to use the Strays of Spalla to move Bincy into the melee row since she is row locked to the range row, but I would like to probably keep it just so that Kelly does not get moved out. And they steal our Cave Troll. Excuse me? I mean, well, so now there's no defender for Kelly, but I guess we'll put her out there and we'll just put some Vial on her so she's a little bit safer. And they have more units than us. They certainly have more units than us. Regis is unfortunate because they will steal the boost we put on Kelly, I guess. We haven't done that much of that yet, but let's just not do that on this turn. So in that case, what alternative do we have? I suppose we could go just Archespore here. And honestly, they have so many more units that we have that we don't even need to destroy this on this turn. Might do that eventually for the thinning, but it is not necessary right now. So that's Conjurer's Candle, and that's a way for them to get points without needing units, so that's also not something we're thrilled about. There's the Drain. Okay, so now, I suppose, let's go with Royal Decree, because with this we can nab Old Speartip asleep, and as long as we get enough time to trigger this, we can get an 18 power unit on the board, so I think that is a nice way to set ourselves up. Here is the thinning, and I think that'll do here. Kelly is still active. They go Passiflora. Oh, and they're destroying everything but Bincy. And so that means that now Kelly will backfire and hit us. That would destroy Old Speartip. I think we can accept that. Just use the boost on Kelly, make her be as big as possible, and we'll live with not having Old Speartip after all. Now they get 2 units out there after they trigger their scenario, and they leave them on the board, so we can remove 1 with Kelly, but we can only remove 1 per turn. So I think we do use Parasite here to dump 1, and Kelly will get rid of the other, because those were both engines, so, you know, if one of them was staying on the board long term, that could have become an issue. Then they'll spend to boost up Bincy. And here's another Peaches. And that triggers the last scenario. So now they have a bunch of additional coinage, and Bincy's bigger still. Destroying more of their units, though, so now it is a matter of Kelly versus Bincy. Oh, and the boat. And the boat is an issue, because it's just going to keep on being the lowest card and keep on getting brought back out, so kind of just neutralizes Kelly. We'll use the boost on Kelly, and I think that's probably going to be our last play in this round with the Ring of Favor. Especially if they're going to play Saul, because that is going to be hard for us to keep pace with that. Because, yep, boat comes back out, so we can't actually get rid of the units that we care about. So we'll pass, and temporarily looks like we're in the lead, but yeah, once Saul gets boosted and the boat comes back out, that's not actually the case. Alright, and so now we have a way to get Kelly back out with Witch's Sabbath. Maybe we take our chances without the Strays, but I'm not a big fan of double Effigy. Alright, and we draw into Old Speartip now. Of course, we didn't get the chance to trigger Old Speartip asleep, so it's kind of unfortunate because we are probably going to bring out Old Speartip asleep with our Witch's Sabbath, so are we willing to just live with that? Having a suboptimal Old Speartip asleep, or do we play the normal Old Speartip? I think we still go Witch's Sabbath, though. And so we do not have our defender, notably, but I think, since we have all this purification, not too concerned about putting the Vial on Kelly, and they'll just pass. And right now, we're tied at 19, but we need to make sure to purify Kelly so that we can still bring her back in round 3. And that way, it's also enough for us to make sure we still win in round 2, of course. Alright, and now, let's get rid of Old Speartip, because then we can make that our Quax target. So, let's go with Alissa. That way we can get our Witch's Sabbath back into our deck. And we still have a way to get Witch's Sabbath guaranteed from our deck. We'll go Tax Collector for some coin generation. And that already brings out the boat. And let's just peek at what they're going to get out from the Witch's Sabbath. And Cave Troll. For us, it's Kelly and 1 Archespore. So we could remove some of the lower value units as well with some of these rocks, but let's use Whispess to get Witch's Sabbath. Break this out. And then Kelly will immediately activate here as long as we get rid of some of our low value units, and they cannot handle Kelly, they decide, so they actually forfeit, giving us the win. Alright, so going up against Scoia'tael here, and we'll go first. And we have Cave Troll, we have Kelly, that's certainly good news. We have Witch's Sabbath to help us up for round 2, and Whispess Tribute to help get that back out in round 3, that's great. More Purification than we need, so we can dump one of you. And Bridge Troll, I mean, we can probably do better. And Strays, I mean, well, Scoia'tael does potentially have movement, so we'll keep you. Alright. And let's begin. First and foremost, I think, with our Cave Troll, just to prepare ourselves to play Kelly on our next turn if we'd like. Though we may want to wait a turn anyway, just to make sure that they have more units than we do as soon as Kelly gets on the board. And for them, they'll start with some hand boosting, that certainly makes sense. And they'll play Hawker Sport. More hand boosting. Also makes sense. So we probably want to wait to play Kelly. And tell you what, actually, I'm intrigued by going with Quax here, because we might be able to break a really important card for them. So I think we might go for that. Let's get Quax into our hand here with our stratagem, and then just dump one of the purification cards. We have more than we need. And if we use Quax, we'll get old Speartip, and they will get Eldain? What? Oh, man. Okay, we just totally destroyed their deck. And so they'll forfeit. I guess Eldain isn't so tough after all. So there's a look at a Monsters Keltullis deck, the new Between a Rock and a Hard Place seasonal event. If you liked the video, then make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and leave a comment down below to let me know which other cards, archetypes, and factions you'd like us to experiment with next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.